You guys good? Brad? Yep. You good? Good morning. Welcome, everyone. I see we have quorum. I call this meeting to order. Are there any declarations of interest? Please indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. Seeing none, I'll now take a motion to confirm the minutes from November 5th, 2019. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any petitions at this time? Seeing none, we'll now go through the agenda. 11.1, final report 225 Birmingham Street zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan subdivision applications. We have that time for 10 a.m. 11.2, preliminary report 689 the Queensway zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Ford, can you move the staff recommendations for me, please?
I'll move staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.3, preliminary report 25 the West Mall Sherway Gardens Mall official plan amendment application. Councillor Ford, can you move the staff recs?
I'll move staff recs.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recommendations. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 11.4, new street naming policy in Etobicoke Centre. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Holyday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish to move the staff recommendations.
Councillor Deputy Mayor Holyday moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.5, application for fence exemption, 54 Harrop Avenue. We have speakers at 9:45. EY 11.6, application for fence exemption, 24 Howbert Drive. We have speakers at 9:45. 11.7, application for fence exemption, 373 Rustic Road. We have speakers at 9:45. 11.8, application for fence exemption, 12 Dennis Avenue. And the one behind it is 11.9, encroachment appeal, existing fence at 12 Dennis Avenue. I'm suggesting we deal with these together. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, and we have speakers at 9:45. 11.9, encroachment appeal, existing fence at 12 Dennis Avenue that we just talked about. 11.10, Etobicoke York minor arterial and collector road speed limit reductions as part of Vision Zero speed management strategy in wards 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7. Moved by Councillor Perruzza. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. You want to move it? Councillor Ford will move it. Strike Councillor Perruzza. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.11, traffic control signals, Statutory Drive and Brookhaven Drive. Councillor Nunziata? 11?
Move staff recommendation.
Councillor Nunziata moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.12, all-way traffic controls at Haynes Avenue, Cook Road, and Haynes Avenue and Brownsfield Road. Councillor Nunziata. Always
Are
stop.
you at 11:12?
On 12. Always stop?
That's not in my ward.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Perruzza? You sure? Councillor Perruzza moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.13, school bus loading zone, Shoreham Drive. Councillor Perruzza. Can you turn your mic on, my friend?
I'd like to refer this one back to staff for a community consultation.
Okay, Councillor Perruzza wants to refer it back to staff for community consultation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.14, parking regulation amendment, Loelvia Boulevard. Councillor Perruzza.
I'm happy to move the staff recommendation.
Councillor Perruzza moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.15, parking regulation amendment, Niven Street and Jeffcote Drive. Councillor Ford.
Mr. Chair, I'll move staff recommendations.
Councillor Ford moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 11.16, parking regulation amendment, St. Lucie Drive south of Gulfstream Road. Counselor Perruzza.
Happy to move the staff recommendations. Mr.
Counselor Perruzza moves the staff recs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.17, traffic calming, Clearview Heights between Trethewey Drive East intersection and Trethewey Drive West intersection. Counselor Nunziata.
Yes, I'd like to defer to our meeting January 8th.
To defer till January?
Yeah.
Counselor Nunziata moving to defer till January. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, our first item is at 9:45.
There's no add-ons?
Timed items, so we have to wait till 9:45. Now, Counselor Nunziata, you had a motion possibly coming to the floor? You don't know yet?
Yeah, our legal department and the planning is working.
Okay, so we might have something to add to the agenda. So our first time item is for 9:45, so we've got 10 minutes, so recess till 9:45. Okay, 9:45, I call this meeting back to order. We'll start with our first item, 11.5, application for fence exemption, 54 Harrop Avenue. Are there any speakers on 54 Harrop Avenue? 54 Harrop Avenue, no speakers. Bring it into committee. Questions of staff? Seeing none, Councillor Holliday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I have the motion on the screen? I think it was to receive. Is it received? Do you remember?
Number 5.
Thank you. So that the item be received for information, having regard that the applicant has brought the fence into compliance. The applicant modified the fence after the report was issued. And so the only way to deal with the matter now is to receive it. There's no decision to be made.
Okay, so Councillor Holliday is striking at the staff recommendations and moving the motions on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 11.6, application for fence exemption, 24 Howbert Drive. We have a couple speakers. Claudio Costello. Please come forward, sir. Good morning and welcome, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, thank you. I think I'm basically speaking for most people in the neighborhood. I have a few points I'd like to bring up with regards to this fence. Most importantly, the safety issue. As you can see in that diagram up there, the house is right on an S-curve. That's been a bit of a nightmare from day one. It is what it is. The property in the northwest corner of the S-curve, if they erect a fence there, they are going to totally block visibility going around that corner. It's going to be an incredible safety hazard. It's already a bit of a safety hazard just on the S-curve, on the people not obeying the speed limits, on the people not staying on the right side of the road. But with the fence up there, there's going to be zero visibility. That's a picture from my front porch. What's going on? And you can't see, once that fence is up, you will not be able to see anything northbound on Howbert Drive. Okay, now both the previous owners of number 24, which is the property there with the new house on it, and the one on the right-hand side, which I believe is number 15, the White House, which is on the south corner, okay, used to have 4-foot hedges around their properties years ago. And the city asked them to remove those hedges because they were a hazard people could not see going around the corner. Neighbors being good neighbors took the hedges down, okay, which way opened up the entire street, helped with the visibility. There's also a school bus that stops right in front of that White House on the S-curve. Now, how is a car coming around the corner going to be able to see kids coming off a school bus? And I don't really care if it's a 10-foot fence or if it's a 4-foot fence. There's going to be no visibility if it's a solid fence whatsoever. The other thing is it's going to create a terrible eyesore. It's going to look like a prison wall. It's going to total claustrophobia. You know, when they originally started to build this house, I think most and all of the neighbors have done renovations on their house. There's always been a mess, and there's construction, and there's all sorts of crazy things going on. And I think we were all very patient with the whole situation. We didn't object to any of the problems or any of the headaches that we had and we had to endure, but I did renovations. I had a mess on the street, okay? We're not here to be bad neighbors. We're basically here to protect our own neighborhood. My parents bought that house in 1968. Several of the neighbors have been there for many, many years. Okay, now they want to put a fence. Why is the house up for sale? Like, I mean, why would you want to erect a fence, period, let alone go to a committee of adjustments to get a 7-foot fence when you're selling the house anyway? I don't think any of us really have an objection to there being a fence, as long as you have the visibility to see through the fence. A raw iron fence, we don't have a problem with. A chain link fence, which is ugly, we still don't have a problem with. You can see through it. But a solid fence is going to be it's an accident looking for a place to happen. Basically, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Councillor Hawley, the question.
Thanks for talking to us today. I just wanted to know what you're asking of community council specifically.
Well, first of all, we don't want a fence, period.
Right.
And I realize that there are certain laws and certain things that you are allowed to have fences and you're allowed to, but that is going to be dangerous. We don't want a 7-foot fence for sure, but I don't believe any of us really want a fence, period.
So you've seen the report, right?
I'm sorry?
You've seen the report.
Yes,
So what's before us is a 2-meter fence or a 2.13-meter fence?
we realize that.
I just want to be clear about what you're asking of me.
Okay, I have a question. How far
No,
back
no,
from?
sorry, sir, you can't ask us questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We get to ask you questions, but
Okay.
you can maybe frame it.
So I appreciate you talking to us, and I want to just make sure I'm clear on what you're asking me. I can vote yes or no on the report. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice. I can vote yes or no on this report. So it's either a 2 or a 2.13 meter fence. I just want to be clear on that,
Well, we definitely don't want anything taller than we would, is necessary.
okay. Thank you.
Councilor Nunzi had a question?
I didn't get your address. What is your address?
Number 12.
12? Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Marcia Ramirez Calaseta.
Hi.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
You have 5 minutes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think,
Once that, we'll just, we got to get you to the mic there. They got upside down, yeah.
my house is a sore eye. I think I did a pretty good job with the house.
Okay, just pull that mic down, please, so we can hear you there, and we'll start your time now.
I don't think the house is an eyesore for anybody. I think I did a pretty good job with it. I'm also concerned with the access to all of the entrances of the house in general. Right, and I just want like a safety fence for it, right? I'm off grade, so it's a little above ground, and so that's why I wanted it a little higher than normal. What else do I have to say? Yeah, it's mainly security reasons. I also think it's gonna aesthetically complete the look of the house. It's gonna be wood, and these are some of the ideas that I have for the fence. Either stained glass or a clear on top, so it's not gonna really be like a solid wood fence. Right, so it's glass on top or stained glass, so it doesn't block my neighbor's lighting either. I would love to have access to that space, so I get to read a book, have a sitting area also, because that's at the corner. And so at the back, this is the back of it. But yeah, it's mainly security issues, because all of the entrances are just exposed when you drive around the bend and through every entrance. It's exposed to everybody to see. And so I want security, number one. Secondly, a little bit of privacy. I'm very close to the neighbor at the back. And thirdly, I wasn't aware that the city had asked the neighbors to remove the fence, because I spoke to my neighbor on the side, and he said they had agreed to do something like that, but they both agreed to take it off. But I wasn't aware that the city asked to remove anything before that.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Holly, the question.
So that's your house, right?
Yes.
And you haven't built the fence yet?
No. We just finished.
You come in, you want a 7-foot fence.
Correct.
And the law says you can build a 6-foot fence. So you came in for
A little high.
this application for that much more.
Yeah, because
Why?
we're off ground, right? And then the windows will be exposed a little, so I wanted just to cover the window in general, so nobody sees inside.
That's gonna make that much difference?
We're off grade, so yeah, we're a little, I think so. I may be
Okay.
wrong with the measurements, but
And you showed us some panels and things in the fence. Have you checked with the bylaw folks to make sure that what you showed us is legal? You might wanna just make sure the panels and things are compliant.
okay.
I'm not an expert, but the experts are over there. Otherwise you'll be back, right?
Oh, okay. No, I don't know, or I don't know if, this is acceptable or also, right? And I think that will also look beautiful, but
All right, thank you.
thank you very much.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, you have a, okay, we're not done yet. No. Okay, thank you, you're good.
Thank you.
Any further speakers to the item before we bring it in committee? Seeing none, questions of staff? Questions of staff? Councilor Nunziata? Okay, Councilor Perruzza, questions of staff?
Yeah, I guess my question is, one of the concerns was raised about obstruction, for example, oncoming cars and so on. So if any part of the fence, prevented people from having a clear sight line of oncoming traffic, you wouldn't allow it, right?
That's correct. There's certain provisions that are permitted. They'd have to have a certain meter distance for a setback. So in this case, where the driveways are all interconnecting, it had to be a 2.4 meter setback.
Right.
For sightline
So,
obstructions.
so a neighbor's, for example, perceived obstruction might not necessarily be an obstruction. It might just be a perceived obstruction.
That's a possibility, correct?
Okay. And this individual does have the right to erect a fence and seek some privacy, a 6-foot fence. They would get that without having to come here or go to Committee of Adjustment or anywhere else, just as any other person in the city would be able to do, correct?
That is correct.
Providing they didn't obstruct any sight lines,
Correct.
like oncoming traffic, kids crossing the street, buses stopping on a corner, school buses stopping on a corner, all of those things considered.
Considering where the lot line is and positioning of their particular house, it would have to be the 2.4 meter setback that would be required for the bylaw.
Okay.
But considering those provisions, any person would be able, as long as they obey by the fence bylaw rules, be able to build their own fence.
Okay, perfect. And a 6-inch difference in what's permitted, not having to come here and not having to seek any relief, and you know, seeking some relief for 6 inches, it's not that egregious. It's happened everywhere else, and in many other places in the city, it's been permitted, and the sky hasn't fallen down, right?
I'll leave that up to your direction there. As
Okay.
I said, the bylaw is what it is. There's different parameters around. At this point in time, there is no construction of the fence. Then there is no safety component at this point in time that is infringed upon.
Thank you.
Next question, Councillor Ford.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask a question in particular to attachment 4 and 5 of the report. So what the resident is allowed to do, how I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, can erect a 2-meter fence in the rear of their yard. And the definition of the rear of the yard is the front-facing part of the home where the structure begins, going to the rear.
Correct.
So this fence, I guess, can go 2 meters up. Is anyone allowed to have a fence in the front of their yard?
You are allowed to have a fence in the front yard, but depending on where the lot lines are positioned, if it's within 2.4 meters of the property line, it can only be a height of 1.2 meters.
Correct.
Right.
And it could be a solid fence, it could be a see-through fence, doesn't matter.
Correct. The only contingency that we would have challenges with is in terms of the sight line. In this particular location, there are 2 areas where driveways and properties are. So at that point in time, they would have to be at that 2.4 meters setback for sure.
Right, with that. Now, I have a, maybe not really particular to this, but on any new home build, does the bylaw, is it specific to how the house is built? So let's say this was the front of the home and the driveway was positioned differently on the other corner. The bylaw would then dictate that the rear yard would still be that, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Hall, a question.
Thank you. MLS is available to talk to a resident before they build a fence, right? They could write to you or send you a picture and say, what do I need to know to follow the rules?
Absolutely.
Would I be correct in noting, and I know the map's far away, but it looks like there's a curve to the property line and there's a driveway near the intersection of the back of the fence. There's a few things going on here.
That is correct. There's a few curvatures to the property and 2 driveways, one being the neighboring property and also the property owner's driveway as well.
Would an applicant be well advised to consult with your office before they put wood into the ground, just to make sure they're compliant and not back here?
I think that would be well advisement, yes.
And it looks like that curve radius would help with the sight line around the corner.
It would, yes.
Okay, and they can't cross the property lines. They have to stay entirely on their private property with any fence.
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to move that we refuse the application. This house, and first of all, we received petition from residents on Howbert and the other area streets as well, and calls. When this house was built, it took actually quite a while for the house to be built, which I did receive a lot of calls on it, that it was very disruptive. But that's not the issue. The issue is that the house is on the corner. Halbert curves around. It goes off Oak Street and off Oak Street, and it curves around. So sight lines is definitely an issue. And then you have the abutting neighbor, which it obstructs their sight lines as well. And when this application came forward, I think the applicant, in my opinion, should have at least called the counselor and spoke to the counselor before they even put the application in, or speak to the residents, and they did not. And so I think this location to put up a fence surrounding the property, it would look like a prison, and being right at the corner. I understand the house was built with different access into the home for privacy, but in my opinion, it's not a good location for that fence. The fence is way too high. Or if the applicant works with the city and works with the residents to not to have a solid fence, and maybe a smaller fence where the issue with sight lines is not an issue, that maybe the community would be supportive of that. But the way it is now, it's not being built, so I'm asking council to refuse the application.
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata. Any further speakers to the item? Councillor Nunziata's motion's on the screen. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. 11.7, application for fence exemption, 373 Rustic Road. Paula Carrascallo? Paula. I'm sorry, Paula, yes. Good morning, welcome.
Morning, thank you.
And you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so in regards to this fence exemption, I'm here representing my parents, and I just want to give you a little bit of background regarding this part of the fence that we're discussing. It's been this height for the last 15 years, and it had been agreed with the original owner of the adjacent property, 371 Rustic Road, who is now, I believe, still alive, but he's in a hospital for Alzheimer's. And when he did live there, he had a son that moved in with him, and he had several addictions to certain substances. And he would have lots of friends over, and they would be partying in the backyard, and they'd be saying vulgar things to my parents, throwing things over, basically causing a disruption. There's several police reports about the neighbor, son, and he remained in the house after his dad was sent to the hospital for Alzheimer's, and his mom passed away as well. And what happened last year is he had several druggies in the house, and he burnt down the house. And his son-in-law took over the house, and he took the money from the insurance and started to rebuild. And he had some issues with my parents regarding their downspouts, pointing them towards my parents' yard. And it's been a constant battle between the son-in-law, who doesn't own the house but is constantly there all the time, with my parents. There is a restraining order in the process. Again, reports against him. And so my parents would like this part of the fence to remain that height just because of that reason. I'm just going to show you this here. I'm sure you have. So that's the part of the fence that we're talking about. That faces their patio where they sit in the summer and enjoy their time in the backyard. Now, what the neighbor also did is he built now a deck, which actually I believe strengthens our argument about that part of the fence remaining that height. And I believe you have that yourself. That's his deck there. And just to keep it short, what else did I say? We just believe that this fence is beneficial for all parties involved, and that just gives my parents their peace of mind that they won't be harassed while they're in their backyard, in their patio, enjoying their privacy without any interference from whoever, whether he stays there or there is another owner. Currently, the house is vacant, and it's been like that for quite a while. And again, it's very critical to my parents' well-being for that part to remain that height. And like I said, it's only half the fence. The remainder of the fence is the required height by the city. And it's only that, I believe it's 30 feet long, the fence, and the remainder, the surrounding fence around the property of my parents in the backyard is according to the bylaws. So that's the only portion that we require it to be exempt. That's it.
Any questions?
Yeah, yes, I just
Councillor
question.
Nunzi, you had a question?
So how long has that fence been up?
About 15 years, 10, 15 years.
The same? You haven't altered it in the last 15 years?
No, what happened was that fence had collapsed about 15 years ago. And my parents had mentioned to the neighbor, because at the time he was retired, that they would cover the cost, that they didn't have to incur any cost, and they would put up exactly what was there. And it was actually the owner of 371 who had asked if we could do it a little bit higher.
Oh, so it did go higher in the last 15 years? It wasn't?
Well, previous to the 15 years,
Yeah.
It wasn't like that.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Councillor Pruitt to the question.
So the last alteration that happened to the fence was roughly 15 years ago. Since then, it hasn't been touched, right?
No, it hasn't been
Listen,
touched.
can you just put up the first slide you put up there? I just want to see, I just caught a glimpse of it. There's a camera on the neighbor's.
Oh, that's what I forgot to mention.
Can you put that back up?
Yeah, he added that just recently.
Yeah, I'm asking some questions now, right?
Okay, one second.
Okay.
Where did I put it? Oh, here it is.
No, this is curious because
Yeah,
it's
it's hard- it's
clearly
so
of
hard.
interest to me, as it should be of interest to everyone.
It's right here.
So your neighbor has a camera facing into your parents' backyard?
That's correct.
On the side of the house there?
That's correct. And we've called
Is
the
that
police
like
several.
a security camera? Like what is
I
that?
don't know if it's hooked up to anything. I don't know. He just put that up, and we actually called the police about that. And when the police comes, he moves it so it angles into his yard, and then when they leave, he angles it back into my parents' yard. So it's,
And currently the fence the way it is, if that fence isn't taken down, does the fence screen the camera? Does it block the camera? It turns it more into a security camera. I guess it sees what's happening in between the fence and the neighbor's house, but wouldn't necessarily see into your backyard. Is that it?
Right. Well, I think it still does a little bit, the way he angled it. We don't know, and
Yeah.
we don't really talk to him, so it's not like I can say, can I see what you're looking at? But the police have been there
Yeah. Okay.
regarding that camera.
Okay. And how long ago did the camera go up?
So the house burned down a year ago, and he's been rebuilding it over that time. It went up in the summer,
Okay.
In the
so
summer.
So it's been up, for half a year or something?
half a year, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Deputy Mayor Hawley, do you have a question?
Thanks. I'm just looking online. I noticed there was some metal gates and like corrugated metal. Is that, and I can't tell
Oh,
on my map. Is
in
that
front
your,
of that iron gate?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Is that
that
your parents' house?
that's my parents' house. That they put that up when the leaves start to fall because of the way the wind tunnel is there, and it brings all these leaves in my parents' backyard. But that's removable.
Do they leave it up all the time?
No,
Okay, so that's not normally there, because
No.
that's not in the report. So we're not getting an exemption for that, are we? Okay.
No,
So
that's
it's just
not
that section.
part of what we're
Okay, that's
talking
how, I just, sometimes you see something online when you're looking at the pictures.
right, right.
And it just didn't
Yeah.
happen. So, but that's the right house, that's your parents' house.
That's my parents' home,
Okay,
yes, that's
thanks.
correct. Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any further any further speakers to 11.7? Any further speakers? Seeing none, bringing the committee questions to staff. I have a question. Councillor Pruitt, a question to staff.
So I just want to better understand this because I've encountered this and we're probably going to see a bit more of it. Cameras. So for example, if somebody were building a new house there and they wanted to put a window looking out into the neighbor's yard, we probably through the building process wouldn't allow that, correct?
Again, I'm not Toronto Buildings. I wouldn't be able to answer that. But again, security cameras don't fall under the purview of municipal.
No, I understand that. I just want to better understand this. So in most cases, we wouldn't allow that window because, and I know we wouldn't allow the window, even though you want to refer to buildings, because we want to respect, to some degree, the neighbor's privacy. So you don't have a window opening up onto somebody's kind of like patio, and people can stand in their window and kind of like, invade the neighbor's privacy, right? Correct?
You would hope, but
Yeah.
again,
So, but now with cameras, and I had a situation in my ward as well, where the neighbor kind of like put up a camera. And it's kind of like an espionage camera, right? It's kind of like intended to capture
Question.
all the goings on, so we don't have any way of regulating that, right? So now cameras you can take a camera which you would think that somebody would put up for security reasons, for defensive purposes, to protect their property, as opposed to being invasive and impinging on someone else's privacy. We don't have any ability to regulate that, right?
again, MLS does not have the authority to do so. It would be just an opinion that I would be giving, and there are privacy rules in place and with the Toronto Police, but again, the city does not enforce security cameras.
Okay, so you don't have the power to do so because we don't have the legislative authority to do so, or because currently we don't have a bylaw that regulates that activity?
Well, I know under MLS, we do not have a bylaw that regulates that activity.
Okay. But are we able to implement a bylaw, and would that bylaw have force? Do we have the legislative regulatory authority to, sort of, take the espionage elements out of cameras that people put up around their properties? Maybe it's a question of legal. Maybe I should be asking
That's what you should
our
be
legal
asking.
staff. Huh?
You should be asking legal.
Why don't I refer that to our lawyer and
Can you grab that mic there? Can you just pull it? Yeah.
well, there's a security camera on that house. I just want
Okay,
to
all
understand
right.
what the limits are. Yeah.
Ask your question. Yeah,
We need a bylaw, for starters. And then we need to enforce it, and we have neither at this point.
But do we have the ability to structure a bylaw that would have legislative force behind it?
It would have to flow from the Building Code Act.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the Building Code Act allows us the opportunity to regulate that.
So while the building code allows us the ability to limit a window that looks out onto the neighbor's patio, the building code doesn't contemplate the development of that type of technology yet.
That's correct.
So we would, how does one ask for an opinion on this? Because it's a problem that's going to occur far more frequently, right? With people kind of like putting up cameras and kind of like spying out the neighborhood, right?
You can ask for an opinion on council's ability to regulate and enforce security cameras.
Thank you.
Councillor Prutz, or sorry, Councilor Nunziata had a question.
I know. We're talking about security cameras now? No, okay. But it's not a bad idea if we, at one
Question.
point, bring forward a bylaw. But just to step, so the reason we're here today and they received a notice is that even though the fence has been up for 15 years, is that you received a complaint, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. A complaint because the fence was too high?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, questions of staff? Seeing none, Councilor Nunziata to speak.
Sorry. Thank you. So, after listening to the deputant, and I understand now why the fence is as high as it is, and it has been existing for 15 years and wasn't aware of the security cameras, so I am going to move that we grant the application.
Thank you, Councilor Nunziata. Any further speakers? Seeing none, Councilor Nunziata is moving to grant the application. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, just some housekeeping. Councilor Nunziata is asking to add 18, zoning review, 70 Glen Scarlet Road. It's been circulated in front of you. Need a motion to add it to the agenda. Moved by Councilor Prutz. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So that's on the agenda. Moving right along. 8 and 11.9, we just said we'd deal together, 12 Dennis Avenue. We're going to deal with those together, so your questions of staff can deal with both 8 and 9. So we have a speaker, Fazan Kahil. Fazan? Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Good morning.
And you have 5 minutes, my friend.
Just briefly, I'm going to start with a picture of the actual property so that council can see what we're talking about here. So that's the property, and that's the fence in issue. So the client put up this fence not too long ago. They built that house recently, and their issue is that the setback requirement, which they've asked for an exemption for, and the alternative for an encroachment. The reason they've put up that fence is actually for a twofold. Well, it's mostly for security, actually, to protect the property. At that property in about 2016, on September 8th, there was an incident. This is a note received by my client from the police. There was a break and enter into the property, and there's vandalism at the property. The damage estimated at as a result of the break and enter was about $40,000. Given the damage was so extensive, my client decided to just tear it down and rebuild the property just from scratch, pretty much. Unfortunately, the culprit was never caught, but that's one incident that happened in 2016. Later on, just recently, actually in the past couple of months, we had someone enter onto the property and try to steal construction materials. So it's a serious security issue, and there is a school across the street. It is a wrought iron fence, so it is see-through. There isn't much issue about, it's not about privacy, it's about protecting the occupants of the home and the property itself from damage. So that's the main reason why we're requesting the exemption. There are also in this similar in the same breath, there are other properties in the same neighborhood on the same street, for that matter, which have fences which are higher than, which are at the boundary line. I'm going to show some pictures. This one is at 54 Dennis. As you can see right here, that fence goes right to the edge, and so does that one, and that's I guess the side yard or whatever, or maybe the front. I'm not really sure, but in any case, that does go right to the edge, and that's on the same street. We have another one which is, I think it says it's 8A Dennis. That right there is the fence on the front of that property over here. It's again right at the lot line. This is 8 Dennis. Same situation. It's right at the edge of the property line of that house. It's on the same street. Here's another one for Dennis. Same situation, but this is obviously not right, and it's more, I guess, it's less see-through with my clients, which you can see through right through it. This is another one at the end of the street. I'm not sure what the actual municipal address for this was, but I'm not sure if that's a side yard fence. In any case, it is right at the edge of the property line. So the issue is the consistency in the neighborhood, for that matter, for one, and two, I know it is in the purview of the municipality to enforce whichever bylaw they see fit when they do, but however, when they do enforce bylaws, they have to enforce them fairly and equally. This is just within an hour or 2 hours, a client was able to produce these pictures on the same street where you have fences which are higher and right on the property line. There is no issue or damage to anybody else if the fence stays at the edge of the property line where my client has put it, as in this picture. As it is right there, it's not impeding anything. It does deter people from climbing over the property or entering the property, I think, just generally speaking. And the client is prepared if there is an issue down the road, whether it be for easements or hydro or whatever it is, to remove the fence and re-rectify it and put it where it's supposed to be or back where it is right now, if there's an issue down the road. But barring that, my client is seeking an exemption to leave it where it is, or alternative, an encouragement agreement leaving where it is.
Thank you. You have some questions before. A flash sale just came up on your phone. Councilor Nunziana, I don't know what that was. It just came up.
The flash?
A flash sale just came up on your phone. Councilor Nunziana, I want to know where that. I'm kidding. You have a Councilor Ford, you have a question.
Okay. So you've shown us other homes on on Dennis Avenue that have the fence, but you're the only new house. You just built your house.
Correct.
There's a difference on what's been there, and you just built the house, correct?
Absolutely. Some of these houses are relatively recent, though. These fences were recently made, so they're not like for example, like this one, I understand has been there for a really long time. It hasn't even been maintained. So that might even be grandfather or whatever the issue is. That's fine. However, there should be some consistency, and some of these fences, like this one, for example, is relatively recent. And so is the one in this picture, both this one and that one, within the past, I think it was about 3-4 years.
So a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from Dennis Avenue, is that the driveway to go where? Because there's no garage. I believe that when the house went to the application went to the Committee of Adjustment, originally there was a garage to be built there?
There is a garage at the back of the property, and the access is through a laneway through a property by, I think it's the Royal Canadian Legion.
No, there is no access there.
So that's one issue which was
you don't have access from the Legion.
Right. So as it stands right now, my client doesn't have access to the garage. So that technically is a parking spot because a car cannot go through to the back of the property.
So you're going to be parking a car on Dennis?
Sorry, I don't think so because the fence covers it and there's no gate for that property at that place.
So where's the parking going to be?
Honestly, that's an issue that my client is still dealing with at the back of the property. Or actually, no, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. The gate does open to it. I don't know if he intends to use it as a parking spot for the time being, but he is dealing with the issue at the back of the property with respect to the garage and access through the Legion.
Okay, so if he doesn't accept that access, he doesn't have parking. And when the house was built and it went to the Committee of Adjustment, it was for parking. So there's no parking. So why don't you use the frontage for parking? It's wide enough to use it.
Can I have just a moment?
Yeah, okay.
Please?
How many units are in there?
Yes. 8 feet.
Oh.
Private driveway.
Okay, let's just stick to the.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Sorry, I've just been corrected. Actually, just to answer Councillor's question, the access through the front of the property through.
So he could park there, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
and
that's,
he could
I
go-
just wanted to clarify it, because I know that when it went to the Committee of Adjustment, it was built, that the requirement was for a parking space.
You're absolutely right.
Because you have more than one unit in that house.
Correct.
It was built for multiple units.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Councillor Ford, the question.
Thank you very much. So my question to the deputant is, in your research on, I think it's Dennis Avenue, you gave us examples of other fences, and your request to Community Council was that the city should apply the bylaws fairly, which of course, I agree with. Having said that, did you do some more research to see if these are legal fences and exempted to the bylaw?
I did not actually, and that's actually a fair point. I think this is, we just showed examples on the street, so you may be very well correct that they may be exempted. Or again, I know the principle of being grandfathered into if they're really old, and some of them might be, but some of them are relatively recent. I think again, it's a matter of if it's going to be enforced, not just on that street, but even driving down in that whole area where there are schools, etc. This is just one. I can pick up 5 examples within the hour that I was able to get this. However, there's tons more example, and for that, in the same breath, that's exactly why, if the exemption was granted to other properties, that's why we're seeking it here, because it's not hindering or harming anybody. As a matter of fact, it's protecting property, which is one reason why the municipality permits encroachment agreements for protection of property and privacy, or privacy, property, and security.
Mm-hmm. And then just another question, not really related to the fence, well, somewhat, but more on the camera conversation earlier. Since there was vandalism to the property and whatnot, has the homeowner installed cameras to?
Councillor Ford, that's not working before us.
No offense.
It's not before us. You don't have to answer.
Thank you.
Any further Deputy Mayor Holiday, question?
Thanks. Who built the fence?
It was a contractor that was hired.
You don't have the name of the contractor.
Do you have
I always like to hear it because somebody built the fence and got paid to build an illegal fence, right?
You know what, and that's funny that you say that, because that contractor told my client that this is standard, my client not knowing a little bit
Right.
better.
That's why I want it read in the public record.
Right. Honestly, I don't know. Do you know the name?
It's fine. If you don't have it, it's fair.
He doesn't have it. I'm just.
Yep. So the other thing, the thing that stands out to me is the second part, which is the encroachment. There's a rule in here that says you got to be set back half a meter. Any guesses why?
I'm assuming because that's 0.5 is city property to begin with, and easements, or if there's for hydro or electric or whatever it is that's.
So people can do the work on the sidewalk, that kind of stuff.
Right.
They got to break up the sidewalk, replace it. They got to put that in. And would that surprise you? The other thing is if the snowplow comes along the sidewalk and it's late at night and it's dark. I'm getting to it, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Would it surprise you that if the snowplow is coming down the sidewalk and it's late at night and it's dark and they can't see, they don't want to hit with the snowplow blade the fence and tear it out? Would it surprise you that's the reason?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I think, however, if there is damage to the fence or whatever, if it's caused by, because of the fact that it's actually there, if it's sidewalk repair, et cetera, my client is willing to take it out and put it back where it was. I think that's an issue that faces all people. Just in that picture alone, there's 2 people right there are going to face the exact same issue. So I think it's.
So here's the crux of the question is your client prepared to assume the costs, all the costs, and not the taxpayer, if the fence is encroaching into that critical area and it either gets damaged or needs to be removed and put back?
Yes, he is. If it's damaged by, for example, a plow by city, and it's as a result of not a negligence of the city, but in fact because of the position of the fence, then he's willing to fix it and pay for it entirely.
Even wear and tear, right? It's late at night.
Wear and tear is his responsibility regardless of how you put it. Yes.
Because he's encroaching into that space that the fence ought to not be. If the blade nicks it, he's going to assume the responsibility for the repair and not the taxpayer.
Exactly, and that's fair, and I think he's agreeable to that too. Yes.
Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Ford's got another quick question. Councillor Ford.
Sorry, just to that point, to the deputy mayor's point, when they're assuming the responsibility of fixing the fence, but even greater cost, because this happened in my ward, if that encroaching fence damages the plow, which could be a much more expensive ordeal, is he assuming the responsibility of that as well?
I mean, honestly, if
I only ask that because it has happened in other circumstances.
So honestly, I mean, my concern with that would be that how, and I'm thinking honestly, just as a lawyer, like my issue might be the way the plow was operated. Again, I'm being a bit difficult here, but in fairness, but again, if that's the case, and I appreciate your concern, wouldn't that same concern apply to every other property just in these pictures? And yet, out of all of those, if they do have exemptions or if they don't have exemptions and there are breach of bylaws, that issue has never come up. I think my client's kind of gone out of the way to try to, do this properly to get the exemption and get the council's permission to keep it as it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Questions of staff? Councilor Nunziata. Who's this to? Councilor Nunziata?
Okay, I wanted to ask a question about the snow plows. So, when the snow plow, and I know that Dennis Avenue, they do have sidewalk clearing on Dennis, I'm absolutely sure. So, would that, in your opinion, be a problem for our plows?
Through the chair, it could potentially definitely be a problem. When we talk about operational maintenance, it's not just the snow plowing, but could be anything like sidewalks repair, even folks riding bikes. If a handlebar gets stuck in one of the spokes of the fence, they could hurt themselves. So the 0.5 meter setback, I think, encompasses many different aspects of safety, not just the snowplow.
Now, looking at the fence, and so that's a driveway. So is that driveway wide enough to park a car?
I believe it is. I don't know if it's legal or not.
So if you're driving, you have to stop, get out, open up the gate to get in, to park your car?
Would you have to do that?
Yeah.
I assume
I mean,
so.
the way it's...
Yeah, if it's closed, I would assume, yes, one would have to open the...
So it is closed now. It's like...
In the photos that I have...
In the middle, because looking at the picture, it's hard for me to tell if it's... So the gate is locked to get through where the driveway portion is, not where the sidewalk.
In the photo that I have on the file, yes, it's closed. I don't know if there's a...
So there's no opening
What do you mean by opening?
that you can just open up the gate to go in?
I believe there's latches.
To go into the driveway? Like, or is it just one solid fence? That's what my question is. I don't know if I'm making sense. Am I making sense?
No, you are.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar
Huh?
with the...
Yeah, can you open it? Because I can't tell by the picture. So it is, but, so you can go in and open it up and park.
I'm going to go by what the property owner says, because we've never attempted to open it, so I can assume...
Well, maybe MLS knows? Does MLS know? Because you've been out there?
Good morning, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the fence is accessible and the driveway can be accessed through the gate.
So you can open it for parking. So is the, do you know if the house is occupied?
I don't have that
You don't
information.
know?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Thank you very much. I'd like to maybe transportation or legal. Well, I think the first question's for transportation. With encroaching, whether it's fences, sprinkler systems, the whole gamut, has city equipment been damaged due to that type of stuff?
City equipment?
Yes.
City equipment most definitely, I believe, has been damaged, but if you're asking of the fence, or that those have definitely been damaged as well, yes.
Right, no doubt. And I know for a few examples in my ward. By us granting an exemption for encroachment, does now the city assume liability if stuff happens with that, or is that still the homeowner's liability?
It's legal.
Well, we can address that, Mr. Chairman, through an encroachment agreement. It should be the homeowner's insurance that pays for it. Having said that, the encroachment agreement would require the homeowner's insurance to pay for it. The issue is often whether they have it, whether they have adequate insurance. The other thing is we've got to fight to be compensated for it.
Right. Thank you.
I got a question. On those lines. So on that, we saw some pictures of fences that are right on the lot line. Some could be legal, some don't. So if our sidewalk plow damages a fence that's illegal, it's there illegally, are we liable for that?
If it's illegal, no. If it's dealt with in an encroachment agreement, hopefully still no. It depends on the terms of the agreement.
So do we need a motion here when we are granting these exemptions that if there was damage from a sidewalk, snowplow, that the city would not be liable? Could we put that in as an amendment?
It's fine.
Would that stand up?
That's the bigger question.
Their insurance would be on the hook for any damage that one of our plows caused to this fence?
It should be, but there's lots of opportunity for them to claim against the city.
But we could move that here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Hall, do you have a question?
Just on that, following that question, I just wanted to check if the encroachment agreement had language that puts the onus on the person that is encroaching to place and remove the fence for maintenance reasons, so that we're not on the hook to, because it's a nice fence, so it's expensive. So if we have to change a sidewalk bay, is the taxpayer on the hook to deal with that, or is that entirely at the owner's expense?
So from my understanding of the bylaw, whether or not the fence is legal or illegal, the city does not pay financially for the removal or the fixing of the fence.
Okay, and that's different from a claim situation where there was damage to the fence. This is around the maintenance piece. And so you don't need a motion from us to have that added to it as well, to the encroachment agreement.
When you say maintenance, you're saying if we do have to replace, let's say, the sidewalk,
Right.
remove it?
Happens.
Yes, same thing, we would not pay. So I don't think it needs to, but there is, in the agreement, when we draft it, we absolutely work with legal, ensuring that
Or you could
is
take that as a
covered.
direction to make sure that the taxpayer is protected.
Absolutely.
We'll keep an eye on fence exemptions going forward, that's built in.
You got this, right?
But thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nunziata to speak.
So I guess, are we going to be moving that motion?
No, I don't know what you're doing. What are you doing?
No, but damage.
Probably not at this point, but no,
No, not at this time?
no. It's your word. What are you doing?
No, but I'm just.
Yes, you can move that.
So to the solicitor, then, so would we be able to move that motion now? That'd be conditioned that the homeowner assumes liability on damage.
You can certainly put that in the record.
Damage to city equipment.
But the encroachment agreements are to protect the city. And so that would already be in there, but if you want to highlight that, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, so then I would like to do that. Transportation sorry, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
I don't know if this helps, but in the report, the recommendations, there's a condition that was added, says the property owner or owners enter into an encroachment agreement with the City of Toronto at their expense and assume all liability and damages related to the encroachment.
Well, that's in 11.9, right, in the transportation one. So that would cover then what we were referring to? Oh, so it's already
But it would
there.
not be better to state it also, so.
To say it?
It's been,
Okay, so
you know,
if we
very
can
clear
have
here.
the clerk maybe draft that up, then, yeah. And we highlight that.
You guys got that, Rosemary? Yeah, okay, Rosemary's got it.
Yeah, Rosemary's got it. Okay, so,
So what are you doing? Are you moving the,
yeah, so I'll move the staff recommendation.
let's deal with number 8 first, because we have to do.
No, we have to deal with 9 first.
9
It's
first,
my
okay.
understanding.
We'll do 9 first.
So we have to deal with 9 first, which is the staff recommendation, and then the clerk is going
You're
to.
moving the staff recommendations and you're adding a number 2.
Yes.
And Rosemary's got that, okay?
Is that okay? All right, okay. I'm moving that, and then I'll speak on it, and then,
Okay?
and then we're going to,
Just hold on, Councilor Nunzio.
okay, I just want to make sure I do this right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you're moving the staff fraction, you're adding H, right?
yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to number 8. Councilor Nunziata,
Yeah, so,
you're moving number 2.
yes, move number 2. And I'm just going to speak briefly on it. It really bothers me that people build new homes and they go and illegally put up a fence or illegally do something and then come back to the city and say, well, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't know, whatever. Everybody else has the same thing on the street. It really bothers me when we have deputants that come forward like that. You know, they know what the law is, but instead they continue not obeying the bylaws. I'm just hoping that the owner uses the driveway for parking because that's the only parking space he has. And there is, on Dennis Avenue, there's limited parking because we do have a school across the street. And it's a one-way street as well. And the school is being built across, actually a new school being built across the street very shortly as well. So I'm just hoping he does use that driveway for his parking because that was when he submitted his application to build the house, which is multiple use, is that he would provide parking. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? We're good? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, moving right along, Councilor Nunziata added 11.8, it's a report request, I believe. 18, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, on to our last item. Final report, 225 Birmingham Street zoning bylaw amendment application, draft plan, a subdivision application. Are there any speakers on the item? Any speakers on 11.1? Seeing none, I have an amendment. Staff are asking to move on number 7, if we can put that on the screen. It just changed the word use any land or erect or any new building or structure, and then we change it to obtain a above-grade building permit. It's on the screen. So with that, this one's been in the books for a while. It's now come forward. This is the old plant corporation. I know back in the day when Daniels converted the old Goodyear plant and put in the development there, this piece kind of was on the back end and was left hanging there for years. Pliant Corporation, they used to make plastic film. They had a smokestack they would blow into that new development. So this is, I think this is when keeping the neighborhood. There's lots of things happening around this site on 8th Street. The old Legion at 8th Street is now new development happening there. So I think this fits in. We've got a great Section 37 here, and some of that money is going to go towards relocating the Cenotaph at 8th Street to its new home at Colonel Sam Smith Park. But I think this is just kind of finishing off the piece. So with that, I would move the staff recommendations and with my amendment. All in favor of my amendment? Opposed, carried. Clause amendment, all in favor, opposed, that is carried. Anything else?
We have to do 18.
We did 18.
Did we vote on it?
We voted on it.
Yep. You missed it.
Okay, Councilor Peruzzi, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
I do, Mr. Chair, that the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws bills 1,649 to 1,659, prepared for the December 3rd, 2019, meeting 11 of the Etobicoke York Community Council, except for Bill 1,652.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaws? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Ford, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
I do, Mr. Chair. I move that Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 11 on December 3rd, 2019.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion to adjourn by Deputy Mayor Holliday. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
Well done, Mr. Chairman.